waste any time, I asked the question, who are the real children of Israel? And I'd like to answer it right away.
Go ahead, dear minister.
Like any good lawyer in a courtroom, he tells you what he's going to prove.
All right.
And then he goes ahead and proves it and let the jury make the decision. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has said that Almighty God Allah revealed to him that the black people of America are the real children of Israel. And we are the choice of God. And that unto us he will deliver his promise.
First and foremost, giving all honor and praise to the creator of the heavens and the earth. We thank that great God for his mercy, for his grace, for his omnipotence. We thank him for our ancestors in whatever form or fashion they may be found. We thank him for our founding fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We thank him for Moses and the Torah. We thank him for Yeshua, or his revolutionary approach to the Injil, or the New Gospel. We thank him for Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, for the Holy Quran. Peace be upon those noble servants of Almighty God. But surely, if I can thank God for men and women I know only from Scripture, only from study, only from the history that has been passed down, I must be intelligent enough. I must be wise enough. I must be humble enough to take from those who have came in this dispensation of time to reveal the prophetic word of God. And I could go on and on and on, thanking God for all of those men and women who he has sent in this dispensation of time. But surely I must thank him for those who have personally shaped, molded, and formed me into the man I pray one day to be. So I'm eternally grateful for the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, the God that he represents, Master Fa'ard Muhammad. I thank him for his students, the Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan, the members of the Nation of Islam under his leadership and guidance. I thank him for Brother Munir Muhammad. May Almighty God be pleased with his life and his soul. The co-founders of Qur'an, Halif Muhammad, Shaheed Muslim, and all of those who stand for righteousness. I'm eternally grateful for Ben Ami, His Excellency, who received from the angel Gabriel in 1966 the prophetic vision to return back to land, language, and culture. I thank him for Nasi Shaliach, that master teacher, formerly known as Prophet L.A. Bryant, who taught us through his writings the prophetic and strategic approach to prophecy, to manifestation of God's promise. And if I could thank God for those two beautiful servants of his, I must thank him for those two who they produced. And that would be my father, my example, my teacher, Prince Asiel, Ben Israel, the holy redeeming angel. Again, in the words of peace and righteousness, I greet you, my brothers, my sisters, in the words of peace. Shalom alaikum, assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. Again, I want to give a personal thank you to every man and woman who is still in the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality. Everyone who has offered up their life to fruition of that heaven on earth. And whatever brick that they could bring to the building of this better world we are eternally grateful for. We must be, as students of history, of builders of a better world, of a new world outside of the paradigm that we are currently under, we must, again, I said, be humble enough, be intelligent enough, be wise enough, be good spirited enough in our intentions and our motivations in lifting up those who have given their life to this work. We, again, are not individuals unto ourselves, but a collective who has implemented that akkad reality, that oneness. Know that we're not all uniform in the way that we approach freedom, but we must be uniform in understanding that complete and total freedom is the only course of action. And that's why today we wanted to bring to you a particular message in line with what's politically, not just politically, it's greater than just politics. It is the essence of what revolutionary, evolutionary men and women must understand. When a world, and I mean a civilization, is being brought down to naught, is before our very eyes being swept off into the wind, and something has to take its place, we must understand exactly the format, the strategies in which go in to try to detour that reality. I want you to hear me now. When the enemy openly and overtly declares the reality of the end of his stronghold on the planet under the auspices of lies, deception, hate, pain, murder, we must be circumspect, intelligent enough to see all of the different tactics that is being used to try to divert or hold off the reality of a new people with a better understanding. I mean, better meaning a more just understanding comes into reality. The enemy uses every tactic that he's been using in his repertoire for hundreds of years. He hasn't really changed his playbook. But what he has done more successful than ever is convince the masses that he is ultimately not just trying to deceive, but to decimate, that he's not that wise, that he is not that strategic, that he's not that aware, and that these things are just happening on their own, but they're not precipitated. Here in Chicago, I'm going to play a video. This past Monday morning was the greatest example in the last 5 years, just overt, of how an enemy preys on the emotion of people, preys on their decanted state, preys on their inability to perceive the dangers that they're presently in due to their distractive environment, and is able to institute greater forms of control, subjugation, and occupation by using subsequently our own behavior inadequacies to do so. This past Monday, early Monday morning, we seen the reality here in Chicago of another supposed looting of the downtown area, where a lot of our young brothers and sisters, and some around 30, up in the 40s supposedly, went into the department stores and started to ravish Michigan Avenue and the high-end marketplace of downtown Chicago. Now, I'm up early, 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30. So whenever you want to get any bit of truth in the media, the news, you have to get it when the story first breaks, because that's before they have a real opportunity to get their narrative together and refine the talking points that they want to present. A lot of times, if you get it live, you catch it in its rawest form, meaning that you're going to get truth. Now, they interviewed a security guard downtown in one of the department stores, Saks Fifth, I believe. And he said it started around 12 o'clock. Now, the narrative that had been put out is that due to a police officer shooting a young black man in the Inglewood neighborhood, which is seemed to be one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Chicago, one of the most impoverished, you get the point. Now, the circumstances surrounding that shooting was very circumspect, to say the least. I won't go into the details at this particular moment because I want to get on to my point. Now, we know that there was some lies and deceptions and some inadequacies in the story that was told. Due to that, they said that a lot of our young people here in Chicago, now this is the same people that you have told us that have the inability to work collectively together, that are constantly killing each other, that we see rival gangs or sets beefing from a 1 block radius from each other, but all of a sudden, in a matter of hours, we're able to connect and galvanize hundreds of our youth to, in an organized fashion, go downtown and enact one of the largest looting periods in Chicago history as it relates to downtown Chicago, outside of what we've seen happen after the George Floyd murder and those riots. Now, back to the security guard. The security guard said that at the outset now, he said this seemed very peculiar because it started at 12. The video that they showed started about 2:30, 3 o'clock. So it was a couple hours that they just never showed, at least publicly, of what transpired. The security guard made and said a statement that my antennas raised instantly. He said it was too organized. He said, in a circumstance like that, you would perceive it to be more chaotic, more violent. It'd be more of a melee, so to speak. He said the initial looters that started around the midnight hour came in unmarked white vans, strategically jumped out, commenced to break in the windows, going inside, did some looting, and were out in a matter of minutes. And then from that precipitated the mass numbers of black youth who were down there, and others. Don't get me confused. But we know we were always demonized, and it was placed on us that we were the main contributors in that reality. That something didn't seem right. What am I saying in this? Again, there are ulterior motives being put in place because there's a fight in the city between the FOP chief, the president of the FOP of Chicago, and mayor and the police department about receiving state or government sanctioned soldiers, occupying force to come into Chicago to institute martial law and other oppressive tactics, Gestapo style tactics, things that white supremacists have been doing all over the world for hundreds of years. But they understand the reality of how the nature of these black people here in Chicago in particular, how you can't really just move in a more brute way and not face some resistance. And because the idea of white supremacy is based on cowardice, they want to almost induce the people to desiring the martial law themselves, which they've been provoking for the last decade or so, and particularly with a lot of the black churches and elders people to try to incentivize their congregation to vote in such manner. Now, we know that was precipitated by initiative that George Bush, the faith-based initiative that allowed the government of the United States to personally buy our black preachers and pastors and church people by funding them in a way that they would be able to have them be holding in their congregation for initiatives such as this, to destabilize the black community, to remove any revolutionary aspect of the black community. So, with that being said, the same tactics are at play now. You precipitate a circumstance, then bait the people to come down and commit them crimes to see, and you know that people in such a state due to COVID, the removal of work, the impossibilities of developing any real capital even before COVID-19, but it has been exacerbated since COVID-19. So if you give people the opportunity to see what they have as a free lunch, they're going to take it. On top of everything that's been going on with the racial divide, it's so blatant between the police and white supremacists and the black community. But this is a tactic they've been using forever. And it was one that as recent as 2 years that was just so blatant, and they caught red-handed, they caught the attention, not of people just in Chicago, but around the world. And I'm going to play this because this is the same tactic that was used downtown this past Monday to incentivize crime, to incentivize looting, to incentivize our youth to put themselves in a position where now they can sanction and substantiate the oppressive force of the United States Army and National Guard. I'm going to play this video. I'm going to come back and talk about it for a little bit. And then we're going to bring our Moray in because he's going to tell you why these things are being put in place so that they can do this.
Police across the country routinely use bait traps to try to catch thieves in the act. They set up a tempting bike or a car, and then they watch. But in Chicago last week, the tactic backfired.
So y'all see this? Listen, this is live, uncut, unedited, bait truck.
Charles McKenzie was born and raised in Inglewood in southwest Chicago. So when he saw an unmarked 18-wheeler being parked and reparked around his neighborhood, he knew something was up.
They sent people up with this truck right there.
So this is where you were when you were taking the video with your phone, right?
Yes.
So you're seeing, what are you seeing?
As I pulled up and approached the situation, I saw the officer putting the young man in the car, you know, and I was standing right here, and then I got closer to right here to see what everything was going on.
They y'all parked an empty Nike truck with Nike boxes in the ghetto.
What Charles caught on video was a new program the police had nicknamed Operation Trailer Trap. Police from Norfolk Southern Railways loaded the truck with Nike Air Force One sneakers and Christian Louboutin shoes. 3 people were arrested for theft in what police call a sting, but neighbors call a setup. Chicago PD said they were only brought in to make arrests, and the charges have since been dropped.
Hey, you don't think that's some bullshit on me?
We always suspect that the police stage crime in our area, but we never able to prove it or document it on film. But this particular time, I knew I got it. Live, uncut. Uncut, people, I got it. Y'all know this script. In the black community, we're over police and we have the most crime. So you would think if we have the most police in our community, we should have less crime. But that's not the case. All them young boys gonna jump on this boy, they're gonna be in trouble.
The timing of Operation Trailer Trap came right after a weekend in which more than 70 people were shot and at least 12 people died.
So it's up to me and my command staff to try and repair those relationships in the community. And we're making progress.
Police have said that they need the community's help to solve those crimes. But the bait trucks seem to have hurt police's goal to gain the community's trust.
Since the people have seen bait trucks,
Right.
What do you think that's done just around the neighborhood?
Oh man, the antennas have went up like, hey, we can't trust the cops. We can't trust them. Why? Because the cops preach transparency, but you practice something else. In the city of Chicago, we have an 83% murder rate that's unsolved. That same energy could have been used into finding the criminals, the murderers.
Norfolk Southern says the bait truck operation was aimed at catching people who've been stealing cargo, including guns and ammunition, from a nearby rail yard.
But my whole thing is, if these crimes are happening on your property, why are you bringing it into our community? If you gonna run a sting, be on the freight yard, in y'all yard, and on the railroad tracks, and wait on them. They're gonna come. When you pull up a truck in front of an impoverished community, and they see that it's an opportunity, come on, who's not gonna take it? These people are in survival mode.
That's crazy. Yeah, they're crazy. They try to set us up in our neighborhood. Yeah, that's what they do, man.
The videos that were posted online prompted so much outrage that Norfolk Southern eventually apologized, saying that they don't plan to use that method in the future.
The railroad police have apologized, and they've said that they regret that they've made people feel that they couldn't trust police.
Well, let me say this to the railroad, and you can take this message back to them. Are you sorry because you got caught? Or are you really sorry that you should have never done it?
They left a bait truck.
Now, I had to play that quick video. I'm going to play another one real brief because it's a point that I want to hit. Now, I've been telling you, anybody who knows, except not really the people that's not from America, especially our brothers and sisters that's in the diaspora, maybe in the continent, maybe in different parts of the world. They see what they see on TV and they take it for face value. Are there black people committing crimes? Absolutely. Is everybody committing crime, unfortunately, that's in this wicked system? Absolutely. Is it exacerbated? Is it hyped up? Is it over dramatized when it comes to black people? Absolutely. Remember, the game is to demonize, to vilify a people so you can justify their murdering, so you can justify their eradication, so you can justify their genocide. That's what's taking place. You deprive a people of capital. You deprive them of any economic resources. You deprive them of any real identity. You've already put them through hundreds of years of forced labor. You remove their foreways, their mores, their history, their language, their culture. You mix breed brother and sister. You interbreed mother and son, father and daughter. You crossbreed. You do all these things. You psychologically, emotionally, and physically buck break them. So you bring a people to nothing. You feed them the worst type of foods in the worst type of environments. And then you promote segregation, which is fine, separation. But then when after all of that, we do something with ourselves. We bring ourselves back up. We clean ourselves up, and using your structure, using your system, playing your game, using your rules, and then you still, because we're such a talented people, you still come in what has nothing to do with you, such as Tulsa and Roswell. We talked about these things before, and you burn down our communities. You kill our babies. You kill our men. You rape our women. You do it again and again and again. This is just another example that even when you don't have the economics, if you just start to do for self just a little bit, because 47th here in Chicago, 79th here in Chicago, 85th, 87th, these were bustling black communities who had the ability to sustain itself, to sustain its dollar. You're talking about 40, 50 times it was standing community. We had everything we needed. Professionals, doctors, lawyers, architects, artisans, engineers, laborsmen. We had all of these. And what did you come in? You come in again and you do the same tactics, and you use the police as an oppressive force, and now you want to bring the National Guard. But guess what? On top of that, after all of those deprivations, you still create the crime. You still incentivize the crime. You still set a standard where you know we're going to be victimized because you took in our fathers, you incarcerated them or killed them. You got our mothers strung out on dope from the crack epidemic. Then the children you indoctrinate to a point where they have no self-identity. Then you put them in these schooling systems and you give them nothing but education that keeps their ideas of themselves in an inferior state as you lift up you and make your imagery be the source of admiration and what to strive for. In 1992, my father, Prince Asiel Ben Israel, Minister Louis Farrakhan, and other clergymen had a gang summit where they got all of the top gang leaders such as Larry Hoover and his man Gator Bradley, Chief Malik, some of his chiefs under him, even though he was incarcerated at the time. Same thing with Larry Hoover. Vice Lords, Mickey Cobras, so forth and so on. Not just here in Chicago, but around the country. And they were able, in all the major metropolitan areas, put a cease, listen to me now, put a cease to gang violence. But you're saying we see murder and gang violence all over again. What happened? This is what happened, what we're showing you. This is what happened. This is what happened. Now, you heard the railroad company. And the police tried to kind of place it on them and vice versa, as the railroad has the authority to set a sting operation if it's not any collaboration with the city or the Providence that they're operating or moving through. Even though we know these railroad companies have their own police force, that's another conversation. That dates back to the 1700s, which were the first policemen in Chicago. I mean, not in Chicago, but in the United States. It's another thing. But what they do, the inside sources that leak information to youth about guns that's going to be on these trains, unmanned, unwatched trains that subsequently just stop in the lowest economic states of the city, the low impoverished areas, and they know exactly what freight to hit, and all of a sudden, there are guns all over the street. I'm going to play one more thing for you.
Chicago police say they are reviewing a controversial sting operation amid growing criticism that their approach entraps minorities. Cell phone video shows officers leaving behind what they're calling a bait truck in the city's South Side neighborhood of Inglewood. It is filled with expensive name brand shoes. 3 men were arrested. Adriana Diaz spoke with residents who believe officers tried to lure them into committing a crime. Adriana, good morning to you.
Good morning. Cargo thefts at places like this rail yard are a major problem in Chicago. Burglars have even broken into containers here with brand new firearms inside, leading to more guns on the streets. To crack down on thefts, police launched Operation Trailer Trap, which activists call unethical.
Now let's see, now the police pulling them over, let's see.
It looked like a routine traffic stop on Chicago's South Side. Police pulled over this cargo truck last Friday, then appeared to arrest the driver as part of a sting operation.
They're showing they took him away, left the truck, ain't no lock on back of the truck. So they want somebody to go and mess with the truck.
The day before, residents say they saw the same vehicle parked on a different street. This time, police arrested a man who they say broke into the unmarked semi.
Man, they got a bait truck in the hood. But the guy, he was looking for something to eat. He was deaf.
Community activist Charles McKenzie believes police were using a truck filled with expensive Nike and Louboutin shoes to entrap residents in a poor neighborhood. So you feel like the police is targeting this community?
Yes. They want us to build a relationship with them, but when they start pulling tricks out their sleeve like this, can't trust them.
Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson said Operation Trailer Trap was led by the Norfolk Southern Railroad Police, with Chicago Police assisting.
They have been experiencing a lot of theft of firearms over there. So we have a responsibility to keep these firearms off the street and out of the hands of the wrong people.
Many members of this community say this is not helping, this is hurting, this is straining relations.
I understand that, which is why I said we're going to take a hard look at it.
Norfolk Southern Railroad said there's a lot of misinformation about the operation, noting the 3 men who were arrested were seen on surveillance videos cutting open the trailer's safety seals and attempting to run off with the shoes inside. At the end of the day, someone shouldn't break into a truck.
Right, that's wrong. But if you put something in a community where no one have nothing to do or no money, what you expect?
Chicago's the nation's largest rail hub, and nationwide cargo thefts accounted for nearly $27 million in losses in 2016. That number's down, according to the security network CargoNet, except for here in Illinois, where thefts are up. Vlad?
Adriana Diaz, thank you.
Here in Chicago, in particular, because again, as you said, You don't think, if you see that there's a persistent problem with firearms being confiscated, being stolen, so to speak, you wouldn't put better security? You wouldn't have your route take you where you don't stop in these impoverished communities? But yet and still it keeps happening over and over again up until this very moment. This is a tactic they've been using for 15, 20 years, longer than that. I'm just saying from personal experience of what I know. I got a brother who said he had a buddy when he was younger that used to know exactly what freight to hit, what cart to hit, and they would do it on a set day. They were giving information. This is before social media. They were giving information. Just Negroes off the block, so to speak. How would they know? Because it was set up that way. I said, what y'all used to have on that? Video games, toys, guns. Oh, guns. I'm going to go to my brother, Moray Kananya. Moray.
Shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom. You can hear me now, see? Hello? Hallelujah. First, giving all praises to the Most High. I want to greet everyone. Shalom, shalom. Shabbat shalom. And for those that are here in Israel, Shavua Tov. Well, now see, the initiative that you were talking about in regards to the deployment of federal agents to major cities like Chicago, this is the initiative was called Operation Legend. On July 8th of this year, the commander-in-chief of the United States, President Donald Trump, he launched what is officially called Operation Legend. And all of our people must be aware and understand what the initiative of this operation is. The deployment of federal agents, stormtroopers, to major cities is supposedly geared towards cracking down on violence. But this operation will further develop, like you hinted at, Nasi, a Gestapo-type presence in places like Chicago, Baltimore, and Detroit. Operation Legend, it mimics Nazi Germany a whole lot. See, when the Nazis put the Gestapo or the secret state police, when they put them on the streets, they did so in order to gain intel on radical political groups in Germany. The Gestapo, again, the Jewish thing became a problem that developed into an issue. But the Gestapo initially, when they were put into the streets of Germany, they were there. The Nazis put them there to gain intel on all the radical political groups in Germany. Let's be clear. Trump's Operation Legend, its initiative is geared towards the riots and the uprising, not the violent crime. They're saying that they're sending troops to these crime-ridden places like Chicago and Albuquerque and different places. But Operation Legend, which they initiated on July 8th, is geared towards these uprisings. The Gestapo, or the secret state police in Germany, they played a huge role in the Holocaust. A lot of us know that. And like I said, their main objective was to combat treason, espionage, and communism. This is no different from what we're dealing with today. It's a similar situation. Operation Legend, its main objective is to combat treason, espionage, but not communism, but black radicalism. See, these federal unnamed officers that's being deployed now in places like Chicago, they're there to counter the so-called black identity extremist groups. See, this Black Lives Matter and Antifa, all them are smoke screens set up by hidden forces in order to make it reasonable for the government to enact Nazi-style initiatives against the black and brown community. So the Black Lives Matter and Antifa, it's a huge possibility that these organizations was probably developed by the government. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. See, remember, these federal agents deployed by Trump, they're going to work real close with the local police department. See, this is the precursor. This is what we should expect. This is all the precursor to the unification of federal and local agencies. See, that's what Nazi Germany did. That's what the Nazis did. They unified the federal and local agencies to control everything that was going on. Hitler did this in 1936. He unified the police agencies in Germany. Now, we talk about Operation Legend. Who is against this and who is for this? There are some obvious benefactors, and then there are some less obvious ones. The obvious pro-Operation Legend clients are the FOP union presidents. And Nasik, I would like for you to play the video of the Chicago FOP union president acknowledging that he is pro-Operation Legend, if you will.
Now is Chicago Fraternal Order of Police President John Catanzara. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
We heard Mayor Lightfoot say that she absolutely does not want federal troops brought into Chicago. Have you spoken to the mayor?
I have not.
What would you say to her if you could meet? Have you tried to reach out to her?
No, I think that for the time being that perception is, or that communication is probably unplugged after the text message barrage that she sent my way and the name calling that resulted from it. But I think that she should take up the president on his offer, especially with a pending march or whatever you want to call it, that's for the Dan Ryan on Saturday. And the reality that is a federal felony, obstruction of commerce, interference of commerce. So federal agents can charge these protesters with federal felonies and send them to MCC instead of Cook County, where we already know that Tim Evans, Tom Dart, and Kim Fox are going to have them out before dinner time.
You said federal agents. President Trump said federal troops. Do you support federal agents coming in and working behind the scenes, so to speak, or do you support actually having personnel on the streets?
Well, the personnel on the street is a little bit trickier of a dynamic, but again, that's something that Pritzker could do tomorrow morning. If he could do it right now if he really wanted to. And I find it rather appalling that the only time that he even speaks strongly about the rioting and looting is because now it's coming to his front doorstep, you know, his neighborhood where his ritzy friends live. And I don't know why they haven't spoken up sooner or louder, but, you know, now it's on their doorstep. And what other parts of this city has been suffering through, they don't care anymore. And the people who are the largest tax base in this city are going to be chased out of not only the city, but the state. And I can't say I blame them one bit.
We've heard that 400 troops were sent downtown on Sunday night into Monday morning, and there were a lot of store owners that said we still didn't have police come there. What is the response you're getting from officers about what they were dealing with in the overnight hours of Sunday?
Well, you know, 400 officers is usually more than enough to quell any crowd, theoretically speaking. But when you're outnumbered 2 to 1, not necessarily a big issue. but they're in car caravans. They're roaming downtown. They can go from point A to point B in a matter of 2 minutes, 2 miles away. The police can't do that. We can't reallocate 400 officers from one spot to the next that fast. So they have the advantage there. You know, if they're going to enact a curfew order, they need to obviously also enact a ordinance that allows officers to impound these vehicles, take away the ability to car caravan throughout downtown.
We had also heard that the shooting that might have instigated this on the south side of 57th and Racine, it was a 20-year-old man who had pulled a gun on officers there. He has had now charges filed against him. There was no body cam video. Is that an issue still with a lot of officers not having that available?
Well, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's an issue. It's not a priority, and it hasn't been a priority for the police department in general. You know, in an age of defunding where they're calling for less money, the consent decree, and this is a perfect example of how we need to increase spending to make the consent decree even a viable option. But body cams have always been part of every patrol district and every member of the CPD in the patrol ranks. The units specifically that were responsible or taking part of that incident in Inglewood, they don't have body cams. They were just reorganized under new names and a new location where they start every day. That new location doesn't have enough, obviously, dedicated docking stations, charging stations, and even the Wi-Fi to download the data currently. So, of course, there's no body cams. But again, the mayor talks about every officer who encounters the public should have a body cam. Every politician that encounters the public should have a body cam 24/7 too, so we can see what they're doing every day. I guarantee you that's not happening.
Quickly,
because if it did, then we'd be able to see the conversation I had with the mayor when I sat down with her 2 months ago, where she said she wanted this contract worked out and the back pay part of it for the last 3 years that our officers have been working without a contract taken care of this summer. That came out of her mouth. And now the lawyers have obviously moved the goalpost, and now they're adding poison pills to that agreement that are going to make it almost impossible to come to a financial package for the 3 years our members have been without a contract. And it's a disgrace. It's made her a lot.
Quickly, before we let you go, a Gallup poll says America's confidence in police is at the lowest it's been in 3 decades. What do you say about that?
Well, in part, it's been the lowest in 3 decades because politicians refuse to point the finger where it largely belongs. I'm not saying the police can't do a better job. I've said it over and over and over again. We could be a little more human. We could obviously show a little more discretion and have a little more humility. But the biggest problem is with obviously accountability and basically consequences, whether it's looking in a mirror and saying, I'm the one who's part of the problem, or politicians and lawmakers, law enforcement officers like Kim Foxx, like Tim Evans, and like Tom Dart, and start doing their job that they swore an oath to do, because they are not right now. And there's, you know, I heard Matt O'Shea on the radio earlier today. There's so many aldermen in that city council who say they're pro-police, who represent largely residential police districts and first responders in general, and they do nothing to back up that rhetoric whatsoever when it comes to city council because they're so afraid of back.
I want to make something clear. This FOP president, John, I hope, Cantazara, this guy's a straight devil. And if you go and do some research on him, you'll find out why I said that. But what this interview doesn't say, and what the reporter didn't know, she asked him about, did he agree with sending federal troops to Chicago? In this video, he said yes, but what the reporter don't know is he was the person who reached out to President Trump for the federal troops to come. He is one of the masterminds behind this Operation Legend. He's working with the White House in undermining the mayor and some of the high hierarchy in the police department to get the federal government power on the streets of Chicago. Now, Operating Legend, what is the underlying agenda? Well, it's nothing new. The U.S. government have long launched federal and local operations in order to destabilize and underdevelop the Black community. They've been doing this for years. This is nothing new. We all know about, well, you should know about COINTELPRO. If you don't, you need to go back and research that. COINTELPRO with J. Edgar Hoover and his initiative to prevent the rise of the Black Messiah. But then there was LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson's War on Poverty, when he instituted the welfare system in the Black community and then gave our young, impoverished Black women abortion pills. Then it was the war on drugs with Ronald Reagan. And even before that, there was a memorandum that came out that leaked due to a few anarchists robbing a FBI headquarters in Pennsylvania. And one of the documents that got leaked was what you call Memorandum 46, which was also called the Brzezinski Papers. These was federal documents talking about how the government was performing operations in the Black community in order to destabilize and underdevelop the Black community. Operation Legend is just the newest memorandum. It's just the newest initiative, but it's a part of a long-going initiative since going back to Reconstruction when chattel slavery ended. They've been conspiring against us at the highest level. See, like I said, they have a long track record initiating covert operations that seek to undermine our community. Let's go back. Now, in the video that the Nasik showed, he showed an operation called Operation Trailer Trap. So not only do they have elaborate schemes of undermining our community, they'll do little operations. See, which is part of the bigger operation. Don't think Operation Trailer Trap is some small initiative. It's a part of a bigger plan. Then we also got the memorandums on Black identity extremists. I don't know if Nasik showed the video, but there was a memorandum that came out in 2017 and which got leaked. I'm not sure how it got leaked, but in 2017, what they found out between 2017 and 2019, the FBI had memorandums identifying their enemy, which was Black identity extremists. Black identity extremists. The Black identity extremist memorandums was nothing more than COINTELPRO tactics used today. What do they do? What do our people need to look out for? Well, what do? Well, they go through great lengths, like the Nasik said, to discredit their targets through psychological warfare, smearing individuals, characters, and groups, and they'll forge documents. They will plant false reports in the media and on social media, which is what the Nasik was alluding to when he was talking about the issue that happened Monday when the brother was shot by the police, and then all of a sudden, social media posts began to run that there was going to be some looting downtown. Social media is what started the looting downtown Chicago, and Nasik talked about his skepticism of what he heard first thing in the morning, a news report that it was white vans and organized vigilantes that got out of these white vans and started the loot. So we got to understand COINTELPRO and this Operation Legend, because we can't really believe and trust everything we see on the media and definitely in social media, because it's all a tactic of deception. And what is deception? It is trickery, misdirection, That's what they've been doing to us, misdirection us, misleading us. We can't get caught up. We have to be first of all, we have to be organized. And this is our biggest problem. We're not organized and we have no control over our youth. And because of that, we're extremely vulnerable to such incidents of what happened on Monday, when we believe, and me and Nasik have been talking about this for all week, that was a stage event, because in order for Operation Legend to fulfill its goal, they have to get the maximum amount of federal agents in the city. But they have to do it, they have to convince the residents of Chicago that they need to be there. That's a part of the agenda. So they're using this looting and all this stuff to get approval from the citizens of Chicago, who's supposed to be a fear for their life, that, hey, y'all need these federal troops here, and this is why. But the whole thing is probably staged. We got to understand COINTELPRO, or we got to understand the newest form of COINTELPRO, which is Operation Legend. See, the underlying message is that we cannot trust anything we hear and see in the media. Now, I'm not into calling everything conspiracy, but I am for skepticism. We have to do our homework. The devil is working overtime to continue the deception. Trickery is a synonym for deception. Misleading is a synonym for deception. So we cannot trust that the events that are occurring, especially this year, are not a part of a grand scheme. Now, we discussed before the devil's overall agenda, which is dehumanization, transhumanism. We talked about that before. There appears to be only one group in the way of dehumanization and transhumanism, and that is the Black man and woman. These so-called Black identity extremists are a real threat, because we want to put the earth back in its natural cycle, reverse the destruction that the Western world has been inflicted on the planet for the last 500 years. The Black identity extremists, what do they want? They do not want to move forward with Western civilization. They want to go back into a time when we were kings, when we had dominion. I got to throw Beyonce, Black is king. I had to throw her out there. The Black identity extremists are talking about ancient Kemet, ancient Israel, talking about the Moors. The Black identity extremists believe it is their divine destiny to rule the planet based on the traditions, morals, and ethics of their ancestors. So these operations are not just political. They're not just racial, but there's a bigger agenda here. The Black identity extremists are the ones who want to reverse the course, and they know it. And so all of these COINTELPRO tactics in its newest form, Operation Legend, is not just a program or initiative to destabilize our community, but it is warfare at the highest level. They are trying to prevent our rise and their fall. They're trying to prevent us from derailing their dehumanization plan, because they know the Black identity extremist, when he begins to dig deeper and deeper into who he is, and he finds out who he is, he knows game is over. Game is over. So I will pass it to you, Nasik. I know you had some comments about the video. I'm interested in hearing. Hallelujah.
You know, brother, you really hit it on the head. I mean, again, we created this platform for two purposes. One, to disseminate accurate information that wasn't based on biases, but is directly connected to the reality of creating your own world and removing yourself from the present one that we are currently being dominated under as a people. Two, to be a trumpet, so to speak, to let out that clarion call, to galvanize those particular people, men and women who really have inside of their hearts the desire for freedom, but need an environment where they can develop it in a more comprehensive way. So I think you and I, brother, as a matter of fact, I take back the word think, we would fit the categorization that the FBI has coined as the black identity extremists, due to the fact that we are at the present moment not just continuing, but to the best of our ability, furthering the realities of those who preceded us in shifting the paradigm and putting us back in a power position. And then that's why we always make it a point to lift up those who came before us and did such great deeds on behalf of our freedom. The FBI's number one target, present day, 2020, 21st century, is the black man and woman. 100 years ago, when the FBI was started, its number one target, even before J. Edgar Hoover, but ramped up during his reign as the FBI head, was to remove that radical black presence from amongst their country. That's why they focus on the Honorable Brother Marcus Garvey, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, all of those men and women who were seeking justice and freedom, whether it be the Black Panthers, whether it be Dr. Martin Luther King, SNCC, Stokely Carmichael, whether it be even entertainers but had a revolutionary approach like Paul Robeson, Medgar Evers. We know what they felt about the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Brother Malcolm X, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, though they could not get to him. How they crept into the reality of the Hebrew Israelite community. I'm pretty sure other communities as well, but in particular ours, because we transcended the confines of the wilderness of North America and returned back to Israel, which you would think, due to their initiative, their opening up their doors to Jews in the diaspora, that they receive the original Jew, the one who was oppressed not just under the name of Judaism or Hebrewism, but was oppressed, murdered, and maimed just by his skin color, just by his presence. You think it'd be some empathy and sympathy there. But that wasn't the case. You talked about those Gestapo-style tactics that America's using starting here in Chicago, and how it is almost mirroring the reality of South Africa and the apartheid state that the European South Africans had on our black indigenous people in that region for decades. Well, let me give you a little tidbit. This ain't no anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic thing. I'm just giving you some history. I'm giving you some context. I'm giving you some present reality. In South Africa, one of the greatest allies under the apartheid oppressive regime was Israel. No, they did not support people who looked like you and I. They supported the Boers and the white power structure of South Africa and trained their soldiers, their officers, in that apartheid, oppressive, Gestapo-style tactics. Guess who trains the Chicago, the police department? The state of Israel and their armed forces. There's a program where a group of Chicago police officers travel to Israel and undergo training courses and tactics, which they bring back here to the United States, in particular Chicago, and you see the reality of that training. By the admission of the president of the FOP, he said, yeah, we could be a little bit more polite. We can be a little bit more respectful. We can have some more discretion. We can be a little bit more humble. We can take a little more consideration. But, so he's telling you, hey, we're here to be an oppressive state. We're not even looking at right or wrong. We're looking at how we can impose our will and obtain our objective. So what are we saying? And I'm going to go back to my brother because I know he want to add something else, and then we'll close out. The reason, again, that we're presenting this information because it's going to continue to happen. It's been happening for hundreds of years of us being here in America. It's been happening throughout the diaspora. We've seen how they done our brothers and our leaders who stood up on truth, whether it be Patrice Lumumba, whether it be Kwame Nkrumah, whether it be Jacob Corretas, whether it be all of those great men. Gaddafi. You seen what they did to Mother Mandela, how she was discredited, even by her own husband. You see what they did to Nelson Mandela when he was a true revolutionary, put him in prison for almost 3 decades, and then he came out speaking a different language. We have to, as my brother said, be organized, but not just we organize in the sense that a group of black men and women come together and just be around each other. No, we organize meaning that we have an objective, a plan, a purpose, and we collectively and cohesively work together in our own fields, with our own skills, with our own set of understanding to accomplish that goal in a holistic approach and manner. That's why we're doing what we're doing. It don't take large numbers. It never has, it never will. That's why we spoke about last week about developing in-house and not being so superficial in the pursuit of recruitment to have mass numbers. Because if it's not about quality and you're focusing on quantity, that's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for disaster. And that's how I know. See, brother said we think. No, I know that was a staged event. I know that was precipitated. I know that was planned. Brother just articulated from their own files and documents the different operations that they have in place. I just showed you 2 videos that they got caught red-handed doing the same thing just in a different form. And you just heard the president of the Federal Order of Police, speak about just total lies. Well, yeah, they had 400 people. Yeah, they outnumbered us 2-1, but we know that's not a problem. But it's hard logistically to move 400 police officers to another place when they can move. So anybody who's been to Chicago, especially downtown, that's not no easy getaways like that. They have cutoff points. You can't just get lost in downtown. You can't. That's why, and we're not going to speak about it, but we knew it was some funny business with the death of our brother, Duck, who was murdered a couple weeks ago, when in the midday, assailants got off without being caught on Lakeshore Drive, as if it's not an exit everywhere on Lakeshore Drive. One way to get on, one way to get off. What are we talking about? But we see firsthand when they want to shut down downtown, they lift up the bridges and they cover all the exits. So you're telling me for hours, 5 to 6 hours, you allowed these supposed looters to go rampant and ravish in a melee style circumstance and situation hundreds of millions of dollars of your products and building space, and you don't do nothing? You don't have no plan put in place? And what we did not play was Mayor Lightfoot admit that they had intelligence that this was going to happen before it happened, and they took no precautionary measures. After 2 months ago, we just seen the circumstance that happened, not just here in Chicago, but around the country and around the world, which we also know was started here because we had people down there who was a part of the initial protest who were peaceful, who were cordial and just wanted to be heard and be seen, but they seen that amongst them were agitators who precipitated the looting and the riot that went mass spread. We're going to keep falling for the same thing if we keep believing in the same people and keep trying to do the same thing. This is a change that must happen. 2020 was given to us by God. It's forcing us to wake up to say, hey, man, we're in bad shape, and there is no course of action. There is no course of redress that we can take under this current structure that's going to bring into existence our freedom, our salvation, some type of future that we can pass on to the next generation. Be clear, be evident. Look how much control you really don't have. Even the entertainers were the best of us. We joke all the time when the COVID-19 happened, and they said, well, if you go back to playing basketball, LeBron James, there's not going to be no fans in the stand. He said, if it ain't no fans, I ain't playing no basketball. Well, we see them playing basketball, laughing and joking and having fun, don't we? Because you're not free. We seen our beloved brother Nick Cannon get up there and talk so black and be so profound and articulate and give our brothers and sisters a platform which to disseminate information. And then when that gavel came down, we seen capitulation. What are we talking about? If that's the answer, there is no hope. There is no salvation under this current construct. That's why this gotta go down to the ground in every form and fashion. And it is crumbling right before our eyes. The answer or the question, which is the answer, is what we're gonna do about it. Moray, I'm gonna go back to you.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Man, it's so interesting that you brought up South Africa, because what I wanted to do is go a little bit back to the late 70s, early 80s, and get into these Brzezinski papers, which I was talking about, Memorandum 46. And the reason why I want to get into this, because here we have the documentation of the FBI and the CIA. We have their initiatives on paper. You know, we have the archives. We can go back and kind of see how they wanted to operate, how they were approaching some of the issues back then, which gives us a little clarity on how they would do it now. And so I want to go into the Brzezinski papers, and you mentioned South Africa, which was interesting because that's what most of the Brzezinski papers was about. It was about Black America and its relationship with the African, particularly the South African. They didn't want the two uniting, and they thought it was a grave threat to U.S. foreign policy. So the Brzezinski papers, it goes in depth of what the government thought should be done to prevent Black people from uniting with the South Africans, right? So I'm going to read a little bit about it. And a lot of the stuff that you mentioned, Nasi, comes up in the memorandum, particularly Israel, right? And particularly Black people's relationship with Jews, interestingly enough, right? This comes up in federal papers. So I'm going to read a little bit. This section is section 4. It's called Black Africa and the U.S. Black Movement. It says, and I'm reading, apart from the above-mentioned factors adverse to U.S. strategic interests, the nationalist liberation movement in Black Africa can act as a catalyst with far-reaching effects on the American Black community by stimulating its organizational consolidation and by inducing radical actions. Such a result would be likely if Zaire went the way of Angola and Mozambique. A recurrence of the events of 67 and 68 would do grievous harm to U.S. prestige, especially in the view of the concern of the present administration with human rights issues. Moreover, the administration will have to take specific steps to stabilize the situation. Such steps might be misunderstood both inside and outside the United States. In order to prevent such a trend and protect U.S. national security interests, it would appear essential to elaborate and carry out effective countermeasures. Now I'm going to skip and go down. It says, a menace to U.S. economic interests, though not a critical one, could be, and this kind of blurry, posed by a boycott by Black African states against American companies, which maintain contact with South Africa and Rhodesia. What he's talking about here, I skipped a little bit. He's talking about if the Black community and the South African community come together, if the leaders come together, they can organize international boycotts on U.S. and Western businesses that could really hurt the Western world. So he said this is what needs to be done. We got to stop them from communicating and coming together. If the idea of economic assistance to the Black Americans shared by the African regimes could be realized by their placing orders in the United States, mainly with companies owned by Black, they could gain a limited influence on the U.S. Black community. In the above text, we must envisage the possibility, however remote, that Black Americans interested in Africa, Africa effects may refocus their attention on the Arab-Israeli conflict. Taking into account the African descent of American Blacks, it is able to anticipate that their sympathies would lie with the Arabs, who are closer to them in spirit and in some place related to them by blood. Black involvement in lobbying to support the Arabs may lead to serious dissension between American Blacks and Jews. The likelihood of extremist actions by either side is negligible, but the discord may bring about tension in the political climate of the United States. So in these Brzezinski papers, they were very much concerned about the connection or a possible connection between Black people in America and the Blacks in South Africa. Them coming together, them helping each other with some of their issues and organizing, and then forming international boycotts and even dictating international policy, particularly what you was talking about, Nasik, with Israel and the Arab. They saw if the Blacks united with the South Africans, that would also be a united front against the Jews in Israel. They saw that. But listen to this. This is some of the recommendations. I'm gonna hit at one of the recommendations, then I'm gonna conclude. One of the recommendations by Brzezinski was he said he thought special clandestine operations should be launched by the CIA to generate mistrust and hostility in American and world opinion against joint activity of the two forces. He's talking about Black people and Black South Africa. And to cause division among Black African radical nationalist groups and their leaders. He said, this is what we should do. We gotta divide and conquer them. The Black Americans, that's take all a radical group, that's cause trouble. That's cause trouble with them. He also said the FBI should mount surveillance operations against Black African representatives and collect sensitive information on those. especially at the UN, who oppose U.S. policy towards South Africa. The information should include facts on their links with the leaders of the Black movement in the United States, thus making possible at least partial neutralization of the adverse effects of their activity. So I wanted to read Memorandum 46 so you'll get to understand this is the words of Brzezinski, who was a national security advisor in the late 70s and 80s. And I wanted you to hear how this is how they operate. And this is how they continue to operate. There's memorandums about what they should do to Black people today. We heard it, it leaked out 2 years ago with the Black identity extremists. They was talking about what we gonna do about these extreme so-called Black identity extremist groups, how we gonna neutralize them. So because they talking about you in a few article memorandums leaked out, no, they got a whole, what leaked out wasn't everything. They got a whole agenda for you. They got a whole agenda for you to destroy you, to mislead you, to cause you to self-destruct. And so a part of the message, what we were talking about, the topic, Operation Legend, when we saw what happened downtown Chicago and the fishy things that happened to the police officer, the Union chief said the police officer that shot the guy in Inglewood, oh, he didn't have body cams. He didn't have a body cam. So that, which is interesting because all of the police shootings that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, one thing that was kind of consistent was that there were body cams on all the officers. And this particular incident that happened over the weekend, somebody got shot. In this time, in this political climate, a police officer shot a Black man and he didn't have a body cam. That's kind of fishy. And then we see the social media post went up talking about let's go loot downtown, and like Nasik said, oh, the security guards saw white unmarked vans initially jump out in organized fact. See, we don't trust none of that. And like Nasik, no, we know it's a part of Operation Legend. It is a part of the initiative to put federal agents on the streets of Chicago in order to monitor the Black identity extremist groups that are beginning to rise or to organize in Chicago and New York and other places. They want to be on the ground. They want more surveillance and they want more power and they want to get a foothold in these streets and begin to, what Nasik was talking about, be able to mass incarcerate people at a given time. I think they locked up 100 people over the weekend at one time. Massive. Wow. I mean, that was mass. They were able to lock up Monday morning 100 people at once. So their strategy is in full effect, and we cannot play into their hands trying to get all our information from social media and listening to the media. We have to be strategic. We have to be conscious. We have to be reading. We have to be skeptical about what we hear and take everything with a grain of salt, because the initiative and the plan is geared in deception. It's geared in misleading you. Because like in Brzezinski, he said, what is his recommendations? Well, we have to do countermeasures. Countermeasures, they're using deceptive tactics. That's their countermeasures. That's the art of war. Deception. They using deception, misleading tactics to get you trapped into their plan. And we can't fall for that, Nasik. So it's been a good one, Nasik. I appreciate everything, and I'll give it back to you.
I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you. It's been a beautiful show. I'm going to close it out here. You did mention something that was very, very important. You talked about Zaire. I'm going to mention Zaire because I mentioned its former leader before it was called Zaire. It was the Congo, and it was renamed Congo again, Republic of Congo. But how did that reality happen? Patrice Lumumba, in 1960, became the official prime minister, kind of moving the power shift to the people that is original to that land of the Congo into their hands and moving out to Belgium. We know the reality of that ended in such a horrific way where they chopped our brother up, killed him, chopped him up, put his body in acid. It was just horrific. But how did that happen? Belgium intelligence and police, British intelligence, and the CIA. All were the main contributors from the European perspective into that reality, and the help of brothers who had self-hate in their heart, who had distrust in their heart, who had a lust for power and would compromise their own brother to get it. That's what we're facing at this particular moment, because we see that not only does the devil, the adversary of truth, put himself in a position that you've seen today as far as creating the circumstances, as far as crime in the environment that produces it. And he puts himself to be a present and overt oppressive position and presence in our communities. He also backs the resistance movement, so he can control and dictate how far we as a people go, or at least intend to go, by the supposed leaders who are directing us. So be very careful for those wolves in sheep clothing. Be very careful for what the scripture says, those false prophets who come in the name of righteousness, in the name of justice and freedom, but are actually in bed with the devil and work not just directly with, but for the very people who we are fighting against. So again, brother, I thank you. And it's always a pleasure. It's always a blessing. It's always an honor. And I think we'll close it out there. You know, we're doing a great work, brother, and I'm so honored to be on this platform with you. And I pray that everyone who hears our voice and the information that we're disseminating, again, don't just use it for your edification, use it for your application. I thank those who are fighting on behalf of our people, present, past, and in the future. All of those who've given their lives to this reality, every member of the community or the nation or any organization who has been a participant, not for their own selfish purpose or reason, but just for the mere fact of acquiring our freedom. I thank you again for listening as I leave you, as I greeted you, in the words of peace. Shalom alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you.
Mogul and they know that. Logo on my flow mat. Courtside Chamberlain throwback match my Rolex.